Assalamu alaikum dear students. Today our topic is the duodenum. In this topic we will study the gross structure of the duodenum. We will study the relations of the various parts of the duodenum, and then we will study the blood supply of the duodenum. The duodenum is the first, shortest, widest and the most fixed part of the small intestine. It extends from the pylorus on the right side of the median plane and ends at the duodenojejunal junction or at the duodenojejunal flexure on the left side of the median plane. The duodenum is 10 inches or 25 centimeters long. It begins at the pylorus, which lies at the transpyloric plane about 2.5 centimeters to the right of the median plane, and it ends at the duodenojejunal flexure, which lies 2.5 centimeters to the left of the median plane below the transpyloric plane. The duodenum is retroperitoneal except the first 2.5 centimeters, which is attached to the lesser omentum above and the greater omentum below. The main function of the duodenum is the digestion. The duodenum is a C-shaped loop of small intestine. The concavity of the duodenal loop contains the head of the pancreas. The duodenum is located in the abdominal cavity above the level of the umbilicus, opposite the L1, L2, L3 vertebrae. The duodenum, along with the pancreas, is the most deeply located portion of the alimentary tract and the least accessible to physical examination. Now we will discuss the parts of the duodenum and then we will discuss its relations. For descriptive purposes, the duodenum is divided into 4 parts: 1 part, 2nd part, 3rd part and the 4th part. The first part or superior part is 5 centimeters long or 2 inches long, and the second part or the descending part is 7.5 centimeters long or 3 inches long, and the horizontal part, that is the third part, is 10 centimeters or 4 inches long, and then the ascending or fourth part is 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch long. The first part of the duodenum starts at the pylorus. It runs upward, backward and laterally to the right side of the vertebral column and reaches the neck of the gallbladder, where it curves downward, forming the superior duodenal flexure and becomes continuous with the second part of the duodenum. The second part of the duodenum starts at the superior duodenal flexure and it runs downward in front of the medial part of the right kidney till the lower border of the third lumbar vertebra, where it curves to the left, forming the inferior duodenal flexure and becomes continuous with the third or horizontal part of the duodenum. The third part of the duodenum start at the third part of the duodenum start at the inferior duodenal flexure and it runs horizontally to the left across the lower part of the body of third lumbar vertebra. Across the lower part of the body of the third lumbar vertebra, it crosses the inferior vena cava and the aorta and then take a smooth curve upward. Then take a smooth curve upward to become continuous with the fourth or ascending part of the duodenum. The fourth part runs upward on the abdominal aorta or to the left of the abdominal aorta and runs upward to the upper border of the second lumbar vertebra, where it becomes continuous with the jejunum at the duodenojejunal flexure. So the duodenum ends at the duodenojejunal flexure. The duodenum starting at the pylorus and ending at the duodenojejunal flexure. Now we will study the relations of the first part of the duodenum. This is the sectional view showing the anterior relations of the first part of the duodenum. The anterior relations of the first part of the duodenum are the quadrate lobe of the liver and the gallbladder. These are the posterior relations of the first part of the duodenum as seen from the anterior aspect. We are looking at the first part of the duodenum from the anterior aspect, and the posterior relations are the portal vein, the gastroduodenal artery, and the bile duct. The superior relation of the first part of the duodenum is the epiploic foramen, which is separated from it by the portal vein. The inferior relation of the first part of the duodenum is the head and neck of pancreas. Some special features of the first part of the duodenum are that it is the only part of the duodenum which is intraperitoneal and hence freely movable. This is the first inch of the first part. Only the first inch of the first part is intraperitoneal. It is the only part which is supplied by the end arteries, and it is the only part of the duodenum which does not have circular mucus folds. Now we will study the relations of the second part of the duodenum. The anterior relations of the second part of the duodenum include the gallbladder, the right lobe of the liver, the transverse colon, the transverse mesocolon, and the coils of the small intestine. And the posterior relations of the second part of the duodenum include the right kidney, the right renal vessels, the right edge of the inferior vena cava, and the right psoas major muscle. The lateral relations of the second part of the duodenum include the right lobe of the liver, the right colic flexure, that is the right bend in the colon, and the descending colon. The medial relations include the head of the pancreas. The head of the pancreas lie in the concavity of the second part of the duodenum. So this is the head of the pancreas lying in the concavity of the second part of the duodenum. This is the uncinate process, and this is the body and tail of the pancreas. So the head of the pancreas lies medial to the second part of the duodenum. The head of the pancreas lie in the concavity of the second part of the duodenum. Now some special features of the second part of the duodenum. The upper half of the second part of the duodenum developed from the foregut, and the lower half developed from the midgut. It lies behind the transverse mesocolon. It receives the bile duct and accessory pancreatic ducts. It is the only part of the intestine supplied by the double rows of vasa recta arising from the anterior and posterior pancreatico-duodenal arterial arcades. Now we will discuss the relations of the third part of the duodenum. The anterior relations of the third part of the duodenum are the superior mesenteric artery. The superior mesenteric artery, after its origin from the front of the abdominal aorta, descends downward and passes in front of the third part of the duodenum. Then is the superior mesenteric vein, which ascends upward, passes in front of the third part of the duodenum, joins the splenic vein, becomes the portal vein that passes towards the liver. Then is the attachment of the mesentery on the posterior abdominal wall. This is called the root of the mesentery. So the other relation is the root of the mesentery, and then is the coils of the jejunum. So the anterior relations of the third part of the duodenum are the superior mesenteric artery, the superior mesenteric vein, the root of the mesentery, and the coils of the jejunum. The posterior relations of the third part of the duodenum are the right psoas major muscle, the right ureter, the right gonadal vessels, the inferior vena cava, the abdominal aorta, and the inferior mesenteric artery. The inferior relations of the third part of the duodenum are the coils of the jejunum. These are the coils of the jejunum. And the superior relations of the third part of the duodenum is the head of the pancreas with its uncinate process. So the superior relation of the third part of the duodenum is the head of pancreas with its uncinate process. The head of the pancreas with its uncinate process. So this is the head of the pancreas and its uncinate process. These are the superior relations of the third part of the duodenum. Here I will discuss two relations of the fourth part of the duodenum. This is the fourth part of the duodenum. The two relations of the fourth part of the duodenum are superiorly is the body of the pancreas and medially is the upper part of the root of the mesentery. So the two relations of the fourth part of the duodenum are the body of the pancreas superiorly and the upper part of the root of the mesentery. Now we will discuss the relations of the fourth part of the duodenum. The anterior relations of the fourth part of the duodenum are the transverse colon and the transverse mesocolon. And the posterior relations of the fourth part of the duodenum are, if we make the duodenum, and this is the fourth part of the duodenum. If this is the fourth part of the duodenum, then the posterior relations of the fourth part of the duodenum are the left sympathetic chain, the inferior mesenteric vein, the left gonadal vessels, and the left psoas major muscle. On the left side will be, here will be the, this is the left renal artery. So here will be the left kidney and left ureter. So on the left of the fourth part of the duodenum is the left kidney and left ureter. So here will be the left kidney and the left ureter. So this will be the left ureter. So on the left side is the left kidney and left ureter. And we have already discussed in the previous slide that on the medial side is the root of the mesentery. Here is the root of the mesentery, and superiorly is the body of the pancreas. So superiorly is the body of the pancreas, medially is the root of the mesentery, and laterally is the left kidney and left ureter. These are the relations of the fourth part of the duodenum. This is the fourth part of the duodenum. This is the jejunum. So this is the duodenojejunal flexure. So to the left of the fourth part of the duodenum is the left kidney and left ureter, and superior to the fourth part of the duodenum is the body of the pancreas, and medially is the root of the mesentery in this direction. Now we will study the inside of the duodenum. The mucous membrane of the first part of the duodenum is smooth, and the mucous membrane of the rest of the duodenum is thrown into circular fold called plica circularis. The inside of the second part of the duodenum present the following features. The major duodenal papilla is a marked conical projection on the posteromedial wall of the duodenum. On the summit of this opens the common hepatopancreatic duct, which is formed by the union of the bile and the main pancreatic ducts. Then is the minor duodenal papilla, which is a small conical projection, situated 2 cm proximal to the major duodenal papilla, on the summit of which opens the accessory pancreatic duct. Then is the semilunar fold of mucous membrane called the plica semilunaris. The plica semilunaris forms an arch over the major duodenal papilla. Then is the plica longitudinalis. It is a vertical tortuous fold of mucous membrane extending down from the major duodenal papilla. Now we will study the arterial supply of the duodenum. The upper half of the duodenum developed from the foregut, and the lower half of the duodenum developed from the midgut. The arterial supply of the upper half of the duodenum is therefore derived from the celiac trunk, which is the artery of the foregut, and the arterial supply of the lower half of the duodenum is derived from the superior mesenteric artery, which is the artery of the midgut. The different arteries supplying the duodenum are derived directly or indirectly from the celiac trunk and superior mesenteric arteries. The arteries supplying the duodenum are the superior pancreatico-duodenal artery, which is a branch of the gastroduodenal artery, which in turn is one of the terminal branches of the common hepatic artery, which in turn is a branch of the celiac trunk. So one artery supplying the duodenum is the superior pancreatico-duodenal artery. Another artery supplying the duodenum is the inferior pancreatico-duodenal artery, which is a branch of the superior mesenteric artery. The superior pancreatico-duodenal artery divides into an anterior branch and a posterior branch. Similarly, the inferior pancreatico-duodenal artery divides into an anterior branch and a posterior branch. The anterior branches of these two arteries anastomose to form the anterior pancreatico-duodenal arterial arcade, and the posterior branches of these two arteries unite to form the posterior pancreatico-duodenal arterial arcade. A row of vasa recta arises from the anterior pancreatico-duodenal arterial arcade, and a row of vasa recta also arises from the posterior pancreatico-duodenal arterial arcade. The row of vasa recta arising from the anterior pancreatico-duodenal arterial arcade supply the anterior surface of the duodenum, and the row of vasa recta arising from the posterior pancreatico-duodenal arterial arcade supply the posterior surface of the duodenum. Between these two rows of vasa recta, the anterior row of vasa recta and the posterior row of vasa recta, between these two rows of vasa recta lies the head of the pancreas. The other branches supplying the duodenum are the supraduodenal artery, which is really a branch of the gastroduodenal artery, which in turn is one of the terminal branches of the common hepatic artery. The first 2 cm of the first part of the duodenum is clinically so important because of ulcer formation here that it is supplied by small branches from variety of sources. Small branches from the right gastric artery, from the common hepatic artery, from the hepatic artery, from the gastroduodenal artery, from the superior pancreatico-duodenal artery, and from the right gastroepiploic artery. All these small branches supply the first 2 cm of the first part of the duodenum. Then is the artery from the first jejunal branch of the superior mesenteric artery. This is the first jejunal branch of the superior mesenteric artery. So an artery from the first jejunal branch of the superior mesenteric artery supply the fourth part of the duodenum. Now the venous drainage of the duodenum. The veins correspond to the arteries but are superficial to them. They drain into the splenic, superior mesenteric and portal veins.